Rukmini is herself an urban planner and architect, and so all of the issues that we're discussing today are very close to your sort of professional heart. And Rukmini works with Australia, lucky us, in our sort of Mekong region portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for the introduction. So now we just heard from Laura the importance of the issues and challenges that cities are facing. Laura also emphasized that each city are unique and with socio-ecological characters and climate challenge. They also have diverse climate challenge based on that context. Laura also said that solutions should be context-specific. So now we're going to learn more on cities' experience in addressing these climate challenges, particularly how they are building resilient urban water management. We are pleased to have 3 panelists to present us experiences of 3 different urban contexts. We're going to listen to the coastal city, secondary city, and large city experience. Firstly, it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Tony Wong to talk about climate resilient development in coastal cities. Professor Wong is a professor of sustainable development and formerly the chief executive of the Cooperative Research Center for Water-Sensitive Cities at Monash University. He recently led a workshop at the Singapore International Water Week on water security and climate resilience in small island states. In the last 5 years, Professor Wong also been working on a project in Fiji directed at revitalization of informal settlements and the use of nature-based solutions for safely managed sanitation and flood protection. So, Professor Wong, the
recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction, Ramani. Thank you for the introduction, and good afternoon or evening. In fact, I'm not going to talk about coastal cities. I really do want to, first of all, emphasize that the region that Australia is particularly interested in is, of course, in the Indo-Pacific. And that has got one of the most diverse characteristics of cities that you can imagine. Now, Asia, for instance, is going to have the largest number of mega cities. And yet in the Pacific, we have probably a whole network of small island states that are also part of our region that we like to engage. So the way that we've sort of designed this discussion really is to start really small and actually think about what are some of the issues that cities in small island states actually have to deal with, and progressively move to secondary cities and then the mega cities, and really to contrast the different challenges, but at the same time see if we can share some commonality in terms of principles that we ought to develop in developing sort of climate adaptation strategies. Now, my job initially was to actually interview a few of my colleagues in small island states, but unfortunately one of them fell sick and I couldn't interview him. So what I had to do was to improvise and actually talk a little bit about some of the small island states, and then you will see a video of an interview I did with the chief executive of the Water Authority of Fiji, and to think about and to hear him talk about what they have to do. But within the Pacific island nation, as you can see, there's quite a range of different sizes, and I'm going to start with the Marshall Island. The Marshall Island being, and this is really some work done by the World Bank, and I'm merely trying to summarize that work, but mainly to highlight the type of situations that they face, the immediacy of what they have to do, and some of their climate adaptation tiers or different steps that they have to do based on different triggers that might occur, whether the sea level is rising at a certain rate and so on. So to give a bit of perspective, this is the boundary of Marshall Islands. I'm going to focus on the capital city here, which is at Majuro in here. Now, just to give you some perspective, this is it. Yeah? People live there. and people are exposed to the type of vulnerability of climate change that you would immediately think is sea level rise. But in fact, there is a greater subtlety to it too, is that they don't actually have a large water supply catchment. They rely heavily on groundwater, and sea level rise actually can lead to significant salinization of their water supply, and that the poor sanitation also can lead to significant contamination of their groundwater system. But that aside, and it's been said to me when I was talking about small island states, and this is sort of the small version of small island states. People actually say that they probably die of thirst before they get drowned by sea level rise because of the impact on their water supply system. You know, that is the immediacy of it. And this is where we need to think about this whole solution of integrated water management, and actually not just think about small island states, their exposure to sea level rise, let's put some flood defenses or coastal protection systems, and we'll be right. So it is actually much more complicated and subtle. But this is the urban area of the capital Majuro. As you can see in here, and this is what happens with the sea level rise, with the 1 meter level. And I just want to run through this very quickly in terms of, these are the type of climate adaptation strategy that they have developed. You know, they're in multiple tiers. I think it's 4 tiers. You know, protect and raise is sort of the first thing that they would do, and they need to do it now, in the sense that this is really to accommodate what might be manageable sea level rises that they have to do, you know, in terms of looking at early warning, nature-based solutions, and I want to stress that again, that nature-based solution is not the answer to everything. But when you have manageable sea level rise in the next 30 years, next 50 years type horizon, there is a real role for nature-based solutions to actually dampen the type of storm surges and waves that actually can cause more and more erosion. So it has a role to do, and that's why it's right up there in terms of what you need to do, in terms of protect and perhaps start to raise. But over time, as you can see, you know, this strategy in one page, which is really amazing. All the type of solutions that you might do, all the sea level scenarios that you have down here, and what are the triggers for different actions to be done. So, of course, in the first 20, 30 years, there needs to be immediate investment in some of these early strategies in there, in this. One can hope, but I'm not sure, that maybe climate mitigation might stop. We might stop it here somewhere. One might hope, but I'm not sure. So, you know, protect and raise to protect and reclaim, right? As the sea level rise gets to the point. And this is the interesting topic that we actually discussed in the workshop that I led in Singapore earlier this year. In terms of, it's one thing to think about reclaim, and Singapore is sort of one of those countries that are sufficiently well off to be the master in land reclamation, yeah? But they, in fact, also did recognize that the business case for land reclamation needs to be tied to the economy of those islands. And there was discussions about the notion that Pacific Islands, tourism, and how you really need to tie those together to provide the business case for land reclamation. There was discussion in Fiji about land reclamation to look at how that could actually introduce an aquaculture industry as part of the business case for land reclamation. So land reclamation is a strategy whereby you not only think about how you would reclaim land and in the process build the seawall, how does the reclaimed land actually provide the business case for the infrastructure investment that comes through it. Really interesting discussion. And of course the discussion then led to the notion that if you actually look at land reclamation, you implicitly protect your water supply aquifer as well, because you are actually now providing a buffer to the sea level intrusion to that aquifer as well. So there are really some of those interesting notions. I have to move on to protect and relocate. Now this is moving to higher ground. As you can see in the diagram for Majuro, there's not a lot of space. There's only a 300-meter span, but there is some high ground. So there might be a bit of a retreat that might be going on. And ultimately, of course, is to migrate. And there are small island states that are actually looking at that. But my point is that that might be at the end of this century. What do we do to progressively implement some of these strategies to maintain a level of livelihood to those communities? I just want to sort of leave it at that, because at the panel discussion we can then talk about what are some of the solutions that might occur. I want to now go to Fiji. Now, totally different context, right? In the sense that this is Fiji, 900,000 people compared to Marshall Island of 53,000, and the city of Majuro is about 23,000 or thereabouts. This is the main island where Suva is, and just to give you a context, I put the picture of the Majuro right here. So that gives you the understanding of the scale, in that the climate adaptation in this case is actually a lot more to do with coastal protection, and there's room for retreat, if you like, and really Fiji can start to plan this out. And so there are climate adaptation pressures. It has to do with infrastructure. How do you maintain their current infrastructure and level of services? Because they do have a natural catchment, they do have a water supply, and so on. So this is where I had the opportunity to interview, this is Suva, just give you a perspective of their capital city, and again, by comparison, that's Majuro. Okay, so I'd like to run the video now, which is sort of a short 7-minute video of just the conversation that I had with Dr. Amit Channon, who's the CEO of the Water Authority of Fiji, and he was able to reflect the type of challenges that he has and what the Water Authority's 5-year plan, 10-year plan is in terms of climate adaptation to secure their water services, both water supply and sanitation. Can you run the video, please?
Thank you, Tony, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. Look, I think in terms of Pacific Islands, I should probably start by giving a bit of context of when we say Pacific Island states. 15% of the Earth's surface is the area on which the Pacific Island countries are spread. So it's a fairly large area, and we have hundreds of small islands on which there's about 2.5 million people who live on these islands, representing about 20 countries. So it's the size of the landmass compared to the size of the ocean creates a challenge in its own right. So when you think about these 20 island states, and you think about the climate change debate and where we are in terms of climate change, the contribution from these countries in terms of emissions has been less than 1% of the emissions. But they have a very disproportionate share when it comes to the consequence of climate change. In terms of rising sea levels, in terms of extreme weather events, whether it's cyclones or changing rainfall patterns or natural disasters, those bits of climate change that we hear about, they are already here in the Pacific Island states. In terms of the impacts or the priorities, if you like, I think the best way to describe the priority would be to build climate resilient infrastructure that can withstand these challenges that are already here. So Water Authority of Fiji, as you said, it is the national utility, so we look after the water supply and sanitation piece. So in Fiji, government of Fiji had started doing climate vulnerability assessment work back in 2017. And that work highlighted the need for infrastructure investment to make some of the essential public infrastructure climate resilient. And I think back in 2017, the assessment suggested that there's more than $10 billion needed in upgrading and making the infrastructure climate resilient. Water Authority of Fiji sort of took that work and did further work in terms of water infrastructure in particular. And what that highlighted was the need for significant investment that's needed. So in terms of water authorities, approach to climate change and climate resilience, we follow, and you'll be familiar to this, the International Water Association have this climate smart utilities program. So we follow that approach because it gives us a bit of a structured way of dealing with climate change. And our approach is a three-pronged approach. In terms of the first prong is the mitigation, which is looking at our existing sort of footprint and what we can do differently. And there, wastewater infrastructure, particularly the largest wastewater plants, so we are doing a pilot at the moment for methane capture. We're also looking at a significantly high energy use and looking at identifying sites which make themselves already conversion to renewable electricity, solar electricity. So those are programs that we're doing to focus on mitigation. But as I said earlier, that for us, adaptation is now not something that will happen in the future. Adaptation is critical because the climate change and its impacts are already here. So where we are, what we're doing with the adaptation spaces, we have identified critical infrastructure investment needed under the National Infrastructure Investment Plan. To give you an example, in the west of Vidile, which is a larger island, the dry weather, the duration of dry weather patterns increasing, which means we need additional water storages. The extreme rainfall is resulting in high turbidity in the rest of the country. When you have high turbidity, it has impacts because the treatment plants, the water intake structures, they were built for different flow patterns, they were built for different climatic regimes. So it is not uncommon that following major rain events, the turbidity goes so high that our plants become almost useless to sort of treat those waters. So we have to invest in treatment capacity. And you think about a sewer network that is largely along the coastal fringe, rising sea level is having impact on sort of water intrusion in the sewer network. So we have to invest in that infrastructure piece. So there's a lot of investment needed in that adaptation space. There are estimates that Pacific Island states would need to contribute between 6.5 to 9% of their GDP every year if they have to get their infrastructure climate resilient. So that kind of investment is just not possible through current government and public purse. That kind of investment does need access to climate fund. That kind of investment does need looking at private sector involvement, different funding models, because it is now the time to invest that is now. So access to those funds is critical. Sanitation alone is a big challenge in small island states. We need billions of dollars for large pipe solutions and pumps to have if we follow the centralized network option. So looking at non-sewage solutions, through ecological solutions such as wetlands, we will be able to provide sanitation as a sanitation service without the necessary sort of price tag that you would typically get with large infrastructure, centralized infrastructure solutions. So we do need capability and we do need more policy-level conversations on those solutions as a valid alternative to the traditional solutions. We're also looking at our own sort of approach to planning, our own approach to urban planning and strategic plans. So in the case of Fiji, for example, we've had master plans based on different sort of geographic cities and areas. What we realize is that in the face of climate change, we need to sort of bring all key sectors together and develop a sector strategy for the future. So we are working on a water sector strategy 2050, which is about bringing environmental stakeholders, tourism, economy, everybody together to say, what does 2050 look like? What does climate change look like? What does circular economy look like? What does tourism in Fiji look like? And then work together on a sort of light on the hill to say this is where we need to get to and the type of infrastructure we need to invest. And that's the piece of work we are right now working on so that we can have a bit more structured approach to the next 10, 20 years, which will be critical for us to build infrastructure that will be resilient in the face of climate change that is already here.
So that's quite a fair bit of key issues that will be food for thought as we start to think about what type of integrated solutions we need. There's no question about the need to have integrated solutions, but their context is so different from the Marshall Island that our solutions will need to be different. But the message is the immediacy of some level of intervention now, and this is also the staging of our adaptation interventions becomes so crucial for small island states. I might leave it there now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Wong and also Dr. Shannon. It's very interesting to hear the unique challenges that small island states are having in their climate adaptation strategies. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jen Bin Wang, who is joining us online to talk about climate resilience development in secondary cities. Dr. Wang works in collaboration with researchers and practitioners from multidisciplinary and sectoral backgrounds to translate research into practice and provides transformative responses to emerging urban challenges. He has implemented over 30 on-ground demonstration projects across Australia, China, Singapore, and Israel. Over to you, Dr. Wang.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Rumli. I think the host doesn't allow me to start my video, so I'm just going to keep talking. So, Sawadee Ka, and greetings from Melbourne, Australia. Today, I think I'm going to talk about the transformational journey from the city of Kunshan, which is the most economically developed county-level city in China, just to the west of Shanghai. I guess the perspective I'm trying to bring to the conversation today is that being a county-level city or secondary city is relatively easy for Kunshan to create a quarantine environment for innovation because they have a different risk appetite. And also because it's small, the decision-making process is less complex than the large cities. And so those things enable the Kunshan to accelerate innovation and then adoption in a fairly quick way, and then moving towards the mainstreaming of the climate resilient action and the practice. So of course I will be unpacking a lot of details in this presentation, but I would like to kickstart by presenting this project. It's called a Kunshan Sponge City Demonstration Park. By the way, Sponge City is just the term coined in China, meaning that the city needs to manage its water like a sponge and build a city like as resilient as a sponge. So the project basically transform or convert what used to be a dumping ground underneath the electricity transmission corridor, which you see here on the left, into a very nice park. And what's special is that the park is not only beautiful, but also functional. The constructed wetland in the park is used to improve the water quality in the canals nearby. And the wetlands, together with swamp forests, are designed as a habitat to attract more birds. And more importantly, the park can be flooded. It's floodable, and so to help to provide flood attenuation during extreme rainfall events. So the image, the largest image you see here, is what the park looks like after a flooding event. So you may wonder why the government wants to spend money in this underutilized corridor. And the answer is every single project from now on in Kunshan needs to be Sponge City compliant, being a public project or private project, because at the point of mainstreaming, it's part of the policy mandate for them to do that. So you may ask, how did they arrive at this point of mainstreaming at the policy mandate? The answer, I think, probably best explained by going back all the way to the beginning, where Kunshan made a very strategic decision. Kunshan basically saying, if they want to ensure the long-term economic growth, they really have to make the city livable in order to attract and retain talents, which are human capitals. And because Kunshan is a water city, you can see here, 40 lakes, over 1,000 kilometer waterways, a truly water town in the delta. they have to rectify a lot of the historical water problems. For example, water pollution, water scarcity, lack of drainage, flood, and things like that. And on top of that, they also have to deal with the uncertainties that introduced by the climate change. Because all those challenges, flood, drought, urban heat, can occur in the same city and in the same year. Right? So they really have to build the urban resilience as a foundation to underpin the livability they're striving for. So in searching for a possible solution to support that vision, Queensland really want to benchmark internationally, against best practice and against the frontier of minds before they contextualize that existing body of knowledge into a local solution. So they really want to leapfrog rather than going through the same pains or same mistake the developed country has gone through in the past. So in the end, they convinced that the Australian water-centered city principles will help them. In fact, they can help them to make the public open space, parks, landscape areas, even canals into a multifunctional hybrid infrastructure. I'll give you an example. The canals, the extensive canal networks, is no longer just for drainage. It can also be used as a stormwater harvesting system so that the rainfall runoff can be treated by the diffuse nature-based treatment system before it reaches the canals. And then the water can be recirculated through the wetlands that's in the parks as a dialysis system to keep improving the water quality in the canal to the point that it is suitable for non-potable consumption. So it can be reused back to the city for toilet flushing, for example. And because we introduce reuse in the canals, we immediately create a vertical space in those canals that is ready as a harvesting and flood attenuation system for the next time it rains. So you see all the strategies are coming together as what we call a multifunctional hybrid infrastructure. So the challenge is that how do they turn those ideas into reality? So how they operationalize this strategy? The answer Queensland have provided is really they took a social technical approach by setting up this 10 steps action plan that were executed over 10 years. Right. And what you see here is they really walk the talk from step 1 to step 10, and that step 10 is where they are at the moment, on the trajectory to become a standard city. Right. So of course, not all the steps are applicable to other cities because every city is different. They have different social institutional context. But nevertheless, the logic behind the steps may be of great value to other cities. So in the interest of time, I can't walk through all the steps, but I'm going to jump into some of the highlights. Step 3, which is after setting the vision and finding the problem, really critical to find a pilot project to test and validate the proposed solution is effective. And the project is nominated by the Queensland City Construction Group. It was completed in 2012. Basically, we helped them introduce a series of constructed wetlands in the public plaza that helped to treat stormwater and attenuate stormwater before the water goes into the canal. In the dry weather events, the series of wetlands is used to maintain a large ornamental pond, which you'll see here on the top right, to maintain water quality through recirculation. In this case, no more potable water is required to support this feature. Everything's done through stormwater. And more importantly, we're able to work with the landscape architects locally, to introduce this, the square concept, which basically means each square you see here is occupied by one native species. So they become a botanic garden, if you like. And we invite people walking on those wide concrete paths. So we bring people close to those nature assets that we built for them. And really interesting, we demonstrate that we're not introducing like a piece of engineering or technology into the space, but we're able to do this in the landscape way. It blends into the public open space. So after the success of the pilot project is really going wide, by inviting more government departments to join the conversation, to join the initiatives. This is a classic example I always talk about. It's a multifunctional corridors. We call it gray, green, and blue. It is a 40 kilometer long ring road, and we turn that into a multifunction corridor, where gray is for traffic, green for ecology and landscape, blue is for canals, waterways. So how this works is every time it rains, the runoff runs off the road surface will discharge into the wetland within the green corridor first. The water gets treated, get attenuated before it discharges into the waterways. And during extreme flood events, the water level in the canal will rise and inundate part of the green corridor to increase the drainage capacity, but also increase the capacity for flood attenuation. So how they able to bring different departments to the same table, for example, Traffic Bureau, Landscape Bureau, and Water Bureau, is that because it is multifunctional, it will meet multiple objectives. So it ticks all the boxes for different stakeholders, and in the end, it delivers multiple benefits to the community. And step 5, so building on the early success and the confidence, this is really going large by building a range of demonstration projects across different scales, from building scale to precinct scale all the way to city scale, and also across different typologies, roads, waterways, parks, hospitals, schools, commercial, regional precincts. Basically demonstrate this idea and technology work in every single scenario. And step 7 is upscaling. Of course, before this, there's a lot of capacity building going on. But step 7, the upscaling, really said they have to build the project in a concentrated way and at scale. Therefore, they delineate this huge area, 23 square kilometer site, to demonstrate the smart city concept. With over 150 projects completed within 3.5 years. So I'm going to highlight one of the projects. It's called Queensland Forest Park, which is right in the middle of this demonstration zone. What's special about this project is you can see these large lakes in the park, which used to be isolated from the rest of the city, and because they worry about pollution. And after we introduced this series of constructed wetlands into the park, and then they are able to help the lake to maintain water quality through recirculation. So similar concept to the pilot project, but we scale this up. And now that lake is able to reopen and reconnect to the regional waterway networks and start help the city to mitigate floods during extreme rainfall events. And in this case, right, we really demonstrated how do we turn what used to be a forest park now into both a forest and wetland park. And we also work with the World Bank in calculating the benefit cost ratio of the project. It turns out that every dollar the city of Queensland invests in building this park, it's delivering $2.7 back in terms of economic benefits to the entire society. The next step is really, getting all the evidence, building all the projects, all the mistake has been exposed, now feeding everything back into a policy reform, And highlights will be the high-level committees chaired by the deputy mayor, and there's a policy mandate to say all the new and the modification project need to be smart city compliant with a certain rebate during the initial 3-year transition period for the industry to catch up, to develop a sector program for them to be ready. And there's a rigorous governance mechanism embedded into the land development process to make sure it is delivered. And now, at step 10, which is on a pathway to transform into a smart city. But it doesn't mean Queensland just keep repeating what it has been done in the last 10 years. There's still create enough room for them to continue to innovate, continue to update the technology, and continue to address new challenges. And one of the things I want to highlight is this S1 Metro Corridor project. It is an underground tunnel called Metro that connecting Suzhou with Shanghai, but going through the city of Queensland. So what they want to do is they want to take advantage of the opportunity that they need to repair the damages caused by the construction of the metro, and really turn the entire corridor urban space that is sandwiched by the two external rivers into a smart city corridor, which could possibly make it the largest smart city programs in China. But what is really interesting about the project is that this smart city corridor, they create a cross-section of the city. So that contains all the different type of land use and across different urban densities, which means they present all the typical challenges that the city is facing at this point in time, and not just about water problems, a bunch of other issues as well. So they really want to innovate new ways of building smart cities so they can collectively solve a lot of the challenges that what we call weak problems of over and above just water issues. Right. So it's very exciting. There's no doubt there's a lot of challenges going ahead in implementing this project, but equally there will be a lot of learnings coming out of the project that could be shared with the rest of the world. So in short, I think this in interest of time, I really hope that we can discuss more of the 10 steps in the panel discussion. And with that, I thank you very much for your time. Copen crowd. Thank you. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wang, for the insights of Kunjan's small cities. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Santi Sombat Vichaitorn, team leader of MQDC Urban Actions. We are also pleased to have as well Assistant Professor Pongporn Suthabantat, Urban Action Advisor, joining us online for panel discussions. Mr. Santi is an architect and urban planner. His work focuses on urban infrastructure projects at various levels. Mr. Santi and Assistant Professor Pongporn, who also joining us online, lead the Urban Action Team, which is a platform of collaboration for sustainable development of cities and communities. They have engaged with various stakeholders to develop a number of communities participatory projects with award recognitions. So over to you, Mr. Santi.
Hello. Hello, สวัสดีครับ It might be changed a little bit ambience because I want to show some video too, like everyone, and might be changed a little bit because I'm not a researcher, but I'm a practitioner. So I will show you our team, what we do. So please, next.
Urban Action เป็นทีมงานอิสระด้านสถาปัตยกรรมและการออกแบบเมืองทำหน้าที่สร้างพื้นที่เปิดและพันธมิตรที่เข้มแข็งในการขับเคลื่อนโครงการพัฒนาเมืองโดยเริ่มจากเจ้าพระยาคลองเมืองเราผลักดันให้ทุกคนตระหนักร่วมคิดร่วมทำร่วมค้นหาแนวทางการแก้ปัญหาของเมืองเพราะเราเชื่อว่าเมืองที่สามารถเชื่อมต่อกับพลเมืองจะช่วยเพิ่มศักยภาพของพวกเขาเราจึงอาสาเป็นตัวกลางในการประสานงานช่วยเหลือและเร่งรัดการพัฒนาเมืองดิจิทัลกำลังนำมาซึ่งแบบจำลองข้อมูลเมืองและการบูรณาการข้อมูลตามความจริงจากอุปกรณ์อัจฉริยะแอปพลิเคชันระบบฐานข้อมูลขนาดใหญ่ AI และบล็อกเชนซึ่งจะส่งผลให้เราร่วมกันพัฒนาสู่เมืองที่สมบูรณ์และยั่งยืนได้ง่ายขึ้นโดยการเพิ่มขึ้นของการเชื่อมต่อการเข้าถึงโอกาสคุณภาพชีวิตสุขภาวะความร่วมมือและเหนือสิ่งอื่นใดคือพันธมิตรสู่การพัฒนาที่ยั่งยืน Urban Action มุ่งเน้นการสร้างเมืองชุมชนเศรษฐกิจสังคมและสิ่งแวดล้อมที่ยั่งยืนและยืดหยุ่นโดยการแก้ไขปัญหาโดยใช้ธรรมชาตินำการเปลี่ยนจากการรับผิดชอบทางสังคมของภาคธุรกิจเป็นการสร้างคุณค่าร่วมกันและการเปลี่ยนจาก 5P สู่ 5E อันได้แก่ Experience ประสบการณ์ Exchange การแลกเปลี่ยน Everywhere เข้าถึงได้ทุกที่ Evangelism เข้าใจและเข้าถึงความต้องการและความไว้ใจและ Engagement คือความร่วมมือวิสัยทัศน์ของ Urban Action คือการสร้างชุมชนเมืองที่ยั่งยืนและยืดหยุ่นที่พร้อมตอบรับการพัฒนาเศรษฐกิจและสังคมที่เปลี่ยนแปลงอย่างรวดเร็วในขณะที่ยังรักษาสมดุลของระบบนิเวศทางธรรมชาติที่ดีได้พันธกิจคือการปลดปล่อยศักยภาพของคนผ่านกระบวนการแลกเปลี่ยนเรียนรู้จากการปฏิบัติการสร้างแบบจำลองข้อมูลเมืองเพื่อเป็นแหล่งข้อมูลตามจริงการสร้าง Open Platform ในการร่วมคิดร่วมทำร่วมค้นหาแนวทางแก้ไขปัญหาของเมืองสร้างศูนย์ปฏิบัติการอัจฉริยะและพัฒนาโครงสร้างพื้นฐานดิจิทัลของเมืองช่วยวางแผนแม่บทเพื่อการสร้างชุมชนเมืองที่ยั่งยืนและยืดหยุ่น Urban Action เริ่มขับเคลื่อนงานพัฒนาชุมชนกับประชาคมเขตห้วยขวางและได้รับรางวัลโฮซิมอวอร์ดในปี 2557 จากโครงการฟื้นฟูระบบคลองเพื่อชุมชนเมืองและได้ต่อยอดสู่งานพัฒนาเจ้าพระยาคลองเมืองความร่วมมือพันธมิตรของ Urban Action แบ่งเป็น 4 กลุ่มหลักๆได้แก่ภาครัฐภาคเอกชนและวิชาชีพที่ร่วมขับเคลื่อนแผนพัฒนาไปสู่การปฏิบัติภาคการศึกษาโดยเฉพาะมหาวิทยาลัยซึ่งมีงานวิจัยและพัฒนาเชื่อมโยงระหว่างภาครัฐเอกชนกับชุมชนเครือข่ายแนวร่วมที่ร่วมสร้างสรรค์ผลงานกับ Urban Action เช่น Beyond Urban อัศจรรย์และภาคประชาชนที่ร่วมติดตามตรวจสอบประเมินผลแผนและโครงการต่างๆให้ทันต่อสถานการณ์ปัจจุบันและร่วมการพัฒนาอย่างยั่งยืน
Thank you. So that's what we want to do, doing, and plan to do for the next with the other and all the stakeholders for sure. So I want to update you about we work like as the project-based development plan. For the first part is like we work with the private sector together with the stakeholder. When we work with the private sector, we have to think about how we can creating share value between the private sector and community and the surrounding area. That's why we try to plan to build a city information model for the data-driven solution, as we talk about in the video. And then this solution that we plan will be our method to think about the plan for the future urbanization, for the business ecosystem opportunities for all. Like we try to propose the wetland design at the Makasan area to integrate with the real estate. We talk rail estate to design more than just the station, but it's the hub, the mobility to connect between the rail and the canal. Then when we think big, it's hard to make the people understand. So we try to make a little pilot project to emphasize for all well-being with the project with the private sector like MQDC. We plan to do the Khong Palat Plieng Canal nearby the Forestier project. That the Forestier district, it has the canal along by, and then we have another project nearby close to the canal. So we try to design the public space like the canal to use the nature-based solution, try to present the order to understand, and like example or pilot area to show the public or the government to expand the project along the canal for all along the canal. Then okay. Then about the river, we also looking for the river like we have the project, the big project like the Icon Siam by the MQDC and Siam Piwat. So we plan to connect for often like the constraint for the project to develop it better. So we try to make it like the co-project development by our master plan. Example like for now we become the lab in the MQDC with another lab. So we try to integrate our knowledge with the other lab, and open to the other educational sector too to join and develop together and in the same goal, or the project in the area like a EEC project we try to make the partner to see the same thing, creating share value. And co-brand networking, develop each project together. And the co-research that for develop the pilot intelligent operating center. เมื่อกี้มันไม่เล่นหรอโอเคอ๋อโอเคครับsorry then when we work together with the like the video we work with the other and go to the with the BMA to work together and with the other stakeholder. This we go to the BMA to talk about the Thonburi canal in Thonburi side. Then we bring together with the stakeholder, local stakeholder, to talk with the BMA and try to talk about how to develop together and the master plan in the big picture. And about the sustainability and the social contribution, we still follow up the community, city and community development since the Lat Phao Canal. Then, like the picture, for now we help them to build, to set up the community enterprise, to create the work and job by the canal tour in the Lat Phao Canal to visit how to develop, how to the change of the Lat Phao Canal community. And also another province we also work in some project in the coastal too, and how work about the ocean too. Like recently we go to the Pen Pachakon Canal to visit, to meet with the community and talk with them how the opportunity they can join together, like the train that already come nearby the community. Then the new house that built by the community organization development institute. And other projects come with the nature that we try to increase the green space and how to connect by the canal too. And the final part is about we plan to do that data-driven solution. That what we show in the video about the city data platform and the urban action intelligent operating center and the dashboard to create the mock-up for the next year. We plan to create the mock-up of the inclusive urban data monitoring platform with the author and develop the data index and algorithm for AI and autonomous system. And we plan to collaborate with the partner to fulfill the business ecosystem, because like the Beyond platform that we work to, they work in another layer like tourist business, and the author work on the metaverse. So we try to bring them together with us to work in parallel and join the data together to make it more efficient. Like this is the example. Like we try to learn ourselves and develop together with partner the data platform for the next year. That's what we plan to start transform from master planning analog to the digital, the way that we try to do, and let everyone to join and work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santi, for sharing us the experience of urban action in working in Bangkok and beyond. Their strength for urban action is really to pull people together, especially the private sector, which is something struggling by other projects. I believe that we still have 10 minutes to take questions from the floor. So may I invite our speakers to the seat, please, including Laura, for taking questions. Thank you, Mr. Santi and Laura. We are also keen to hear the participants' experience on building resilient water management in your own urban context, if you'd like to share with the panelists as well. So are there any questions or comments from the participants? Please.
Microphone.
Thank you very much. In fact, what I have observed today is that we have listed some of the impacts or risks associated with warming climate, and we have also presented some solutions, like whether it's database solutions, or we are discussing that the solutions should be some listed very impactful solutions. But at the same time, we are also discussing that data are not open, science is not open, and we are saying that data should be open and science should be open. So when you have presented these solutions, do you feel the same challenge or not? And if not, then there is a big discussion still going on that data is not available or it's not open, and then we are presenting solutions. So are we advancing very fast or not? So this is just a quick question, that how you are having those challenges.
Oh, look, I'll start. The science is always open. I think I have to make that first point, that in fact a lot of the work that the community do, the research community, they are published. The innovation from the practitioners is how they actually use that data to a site that they're dealing with. So the science is always there. Data is usually not there. And I've worked in data poor environment pretty much all my life, especially having in the last 5 years started working in developing world, that it is truly a data poor environment. But that, to some degree, it challenges us to use our professional judgment. That's why we have been educated the way we have, and that's why we've been undertaking research and know all of that, whereby we are best placed to make certain judgment about some of the biophysical phenomena that data would normally tell us. So I don't think that you can ever take the art of science and knowledge and interpretation from the work that we do in developing some of those solutions. So I agree that we would all love to have a perfect world in data, but what is even more important is the need for urgent action, and that we cannot simply just sit back and wait for data. We have to make judgments, and you have to look at reference sites elsewhere, nearby, to try and cobble together data from all different sources, and then make a judgment. That's what we as professionals are really there to do. So that's my response. I think that we love to have data, but we can't stop simply because we don't have data.
Can I answer? I would say in my experience as well that one of the barriers to implementation of some of these really great pilots that we've seen today is not a lack of data or knowledge, but it's a cultural shift. And I don't mean that in terms of societal culture, but in terms of disciplinary culture. If we're looking at, this is the way we do urban planning, for example, because this is the way we've been trained to do urban planning. And nature-based solutions are not necessarily part of the way historically or in to do urban planning. And I think there is immense value in having these kind of pilots now that are working, that are providing solutions, that we're able now to show policymakers, look, we've done this, here it is, and it's working. And I think that's for me a huge step forward, moving from that knowledge that's being published in academic papers but maybe not reaching policymakers, urban planners, decision makers that can actually do this kind of work. So I've had the good luck to see Water Sensitive Cities Australia present this information in Phnom Penh, and it was extremely well received by stakeholders around the table. They said, yeah, we can see how this is really relevant to our context, and that makes me quite inspired and quite hopeful that with these practical examples, people in a position to change that institutional culture of urban planning can start to integrate more of this moving forward. Did you want to add?
Okay, so about the data, from our lesson, Urban Action, we cannot wait. We can, if we wait for the data, so it's the plan is still the plan on the paper, cannot start. Then if we have clearly thinking that it should do, so just do it. And with the data we have on the time, then the strategy that we work is about the action learning and sharing. Because if we not action, so the people cannot see what we want to do. Then we should learn with them and show them. Start by the little group that agree with us to work on the data that we have. Then after that, if we can expand to the bigger scale, then we can show the more stakeholder to join and got more data. Like we work on the Lat Phao Canal too. We start from the two community that agree with us to work on the master plan. And then when government saw the result is better, so they join us to make it more impact and expand to the other community too.
Anything you like to add, Jambin?
I think the panel covered a lot of things. Maybe just one thing I really want to highlight is that when we have a evidence-based policy, it's very important that we don't make it a black and white. Let me put it into perspective. For example, in China, they try to use quantitative targets for the smart city requirement. For example, the runoff control rate is 80%. So the question is that when I have a project that achieves 79%, which is 1% short from the target, do I proceed with the project? I'm very glad to see that Queensland created this flexible policy environment that still give go ahead to 79%, because we shouldn't be distracted by the data about whether it's matching that line or not. We should always keep in mind that what's the overarching objective, which is moving city, shaping city towards that vision, which is a long-term vision. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Actually, if I could just add one more point. I mean, data could be used for so many different things, for policy, for helping design, and so on. And I want to come back to the notion of data for design. And there is a real practice of adaptive design that we do. Even the example that I showed for the Marshall Island is actually a representation of how you deliver an adaptive solution, how you stage it. Because over time, you get more data, you get more experience. You just need to make sure that the infrastructure that you're designing has the capacity to be augmented, to be adapted. So there, in architecture, there's been a long time of adaptive design in architecture. Well, infrastructure, really, we should be doing that too, because we can't really predict the future. We know the trend, and therefore we actually start to think about infrastructure that has the capacity to be adapted over time as we gain more and more knowledge of that system.
Thank you. I think we can take one last question. No.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very inspiring. And when it comes to smart cities and digital twins, there is always a concern that about data privacy and transparency. And my question is what do you think about them, these concerns, and how do you tackle with these issues in different contexts in your projects? Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That one point that many people concerned about the privacy, and we too. So I think about the data or the digital platform, city data platform that we try to create. We have the level to the access to the important data. I think the sensitive data we cannot let everyone access to, so we have to protect about that. Then when the secure data that we can publish, so we can let them know. Anyway, the concept that we work is about the try to open as much as possible to let them know the direction we go together. Otherwise, if work separately, so we go to no direction, go to each one direction.
My take on smart city is a little bit more mischievous, in the sense that you got to have one end of the spectrum, which is sort of digitally enhanced smart city, but you can have the other end of the spectrum, which is actually smart infrastructure and smart community, and that is actually the fundamental building block to resilience and adaptive capacity. They're absolutely smart in that sense, in terms of the flexibility of infrastructure, its multifunctionality, and maybe some real-time control, which actually starts to merge across to the digital technology without even touching on some of those privacy issues that you talk about. So you can actually take a smart city to quite a fair way to get it to be really adaptive and resilient without even needing to grapple with those whole issues of personal data and so on and so forth. Because in the water sector, it is quite different from a smart city from the financial sector, for instance, yeah? So I think we need to think of it in that perspective. And I'm being very mischievous by saying that the building blocks of a smart city is actually smart infrastructure and smart community as the building block.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that we are asked to close the session. I'm very sorry and hope we can discuss further outside. This discussion has been very interesting and fruitful. Lastly, I just would like to thank our panelists, Dr. Laura Beckwith, Mr. Santi Sombat Vichathorn, Dr. Chen Bin Wang online with us, Professor Tony Wong, and Dr. Amit Chanans as well. And thanks all the participants for your active engagement. We hope you enjoy the conversations. And with this, we come to the closing of our panel discussion, and I'd like to hand back to John Doerr for
Well, this will be very brief because I can feel the staff at the gate. But just, I just also wanted to thank people, but just remind us of what we've just done in the last hour and a half. I mean, the whole objective was just to create a little bit of inspiration, a few good ideas, and help people connect up. So, Laura set the scene for us. Tony, thank you for sharing the nuances of the small island states, including Marshall Islands. Amit, if you're online, thank you very much, sir, for the climate action context from the Fiji Water Authority. Jun Bin took us to Kunshan City near Shanghai, and its real improvements on the way to becoming a sponge city. So thank you for that. Kunsanti and Ajahn Pongporn. We didn't hear from Ajahn Pongporn, but I know you work with him very closely. So they showed us urban action, real work making a difference in Bangkok to the rivers and canals, and to your final point, Tony, I think to working with communities and building a momentum of people that are interested and don't just leave it all to BMA. So, yeah, thank you also to Ben Famage and Catherine Cross, who's online, and Rutmini, who sort of put the session together and recruited such great colleagues. And thank you all for sort of joining us. Good night.